I just pressed the Let's Go Live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. And I was explaining to locals that we have a new experience that we're in right now on our Restream software. Restream is the software that we use to beam this all across the fruited plain, and so we're in a new experience right now. So hopefully it works out for us. We had a little bit of an issue this morning, but it looks like it's working. That's tremendous news. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and today we are talking about Donald Trump and his assistant, Walt Nauta, who had his arraignment in court in Florida. We are going to go through that. I've got the documents pulled up. Remember, he was having some time finding a lawyer, and so the arraignment got pushed back several times. We were wondering when this was going to happen. Turns out he got a lawyer. Her name is Sasha Dadan, and so she's going to be the local counsel who is joining teams with Stanley Woodland, I believe is his name. And so he filed a pro hoc vice filing as well. So Walt has two lawyers, and they had their arraignment. Very short proceeding. Walt got released on his personal recognizance. We'll go through some of the filings there and piece together what happened, because he is currently the only other co-defendant in the Trump prosecution out of Florida. And there may be other individuals who were added. We've talked about the potential for superseding indictments and other things, but that's the big update on Trump. There's also a new photo that got released. Portions of the original search warrant affidavit were unredacted, and so there's a new photo, and all of the people over at Mediaite are going hog wild over it. So we'll talk about that, as well as some news stories about allegedly Walt moving boxes after they were subpoenaed. So that will be in our first part of our update. Then I want to spend a little bit more time on this new Omnibus Order, because the Walt Nauta trial is scheduled right alongside Donald Trump's trial. And this is coming up very, very soon. August 2023, right? That's like, what, 6 weeks from now? Coming on soon, coming in hot. And so we're going to see a bunch of filings. But this was the latest, an Omnibus Order for Walt, confirming that his trial, as the co-defendant in this case, is also scheduled for August 14th, coming up very, very soon. So we're going to see a flurry, one way or the other. We're going to see a flurry of activity to postpone this trial, or we're going to see a bunch of activity to actually have the trial, including disclosures and motions in limine and other stuff. So we'll go through the latest from the court. Then we also have some updates with Jack Smith, because he is now coming into Arizona, shout out, and he has subpoenaed our Secretary of State twice, actually. And he also allegedly, or actually not allegedly, I mean, according to Rusty Bowers, he had a full sit-down interview with him. And this was kind of a shocking interview. Rusty Bowers was an Arizona state representative, and he showed up on CNN yesterday with what's-her-face, and really had a lot to say, and had an opinion on Trump that's not a good one. So it's kind of a brutal interview. We'll go through that. But then Donald Trump responded to this, calling Jack Smith a crackhead. And you can make your own decision on that. Look at those bags under those eyes there. You can come to your own conclusions. But my point is, that's what Trump said. And then Christie was asked about that. Is the fact that Donald Trump is calling the special counsel a crackhead who might be responsible for the dime bag in the White House, is that a problem for him? Christie will share his opinion on that. Then we have the White House, a lot of activity here. Questions about whether Hunter was the person responsible for the cocaine found there, apparently in a cubby at the White House. You see a super slow-mo version of that sniffle or the nose itch that Hunter had during the White House July 4th ceremonies. But apparently the reporting, if you can imagine, I mean, I know it's shocking, but the original reporting was just not accurate. Oh, man. No, it's just inaccurate. It's not like they lied to us. No, it's just inaccurate. In fact, the cocaine was found in an entirely different location. So we'll see what that means, or if there's anything to tease out of it. But the White House was doing some traveling today. Joe Biden was moving around. You know, they move him from room to room and they just, okay, read that, Joe. All right, next room, read that. All right. So he was moving around, and this guy, Andrew Bates, who is the deputy press secretary over at the press room, and he was flying around with them. And so there was a brief gaggle, as they say, when they get him around and they, I guess, gaggle with each other. It must be a term of art for the journos and our government bureaus gaggling each other. Ugh, gross. So whatever, they're having a conversation and they got him on recording. And he said, in response to a very particular question about, can you confirm at least the bare minimum here, that these drugs, this bag of cocaine, this dime bag, it at least didn't belong to Joe and Hunter. Can you at least give us that peace of mind, sir? He says, sorry, can't talk about it because of the Hatch Act. So we'll read through that. We'll read through what the Hatch Act says. I don't think the Hatch Act covers questions about whether the Biden crime family or any political crime family is covering up for, drugs, or whether they're responsible for drugs in the White House. But you can be the judge of that. We'll go through his response. And then in our last segment, we've got some other updates from the Hunter Biden investigation. Apparently, the Wall Street Journal is saying that they're really trying to wrap this thing up. Like, his lawyers are trying to get this thing done and put a bow on it so that there's nobody else talking about it. And as we speculated here earlier this week, that there's no additional charges, because it would be a global resolution, and it would say is that, as part of the terms of this plea, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the DOJ, stipulates that they're not going to pursue this investigation or any other investigation stemming from tax charges, right? Or any other from gun charges or anything else related to laptops. They put it in there. So he is sealed. So they want to get it done. In fact, apparently one Democratic strategist says the Republicans smell blood in the water and they are coming in hot. So their team on the Biden side is trying to close this thing up. Chuck Grassley sent a letter over to the special counsel's office. This is not to Biden's special counsel, but to the special counsel, not to Robert Hur, but actually to Henry J. Kerner. And he's demanding more investigations into why the IRS whistleblower, Gary Shapley, and his colleague, Mr. X, why they were removed from the inquiry. And so Comer is going to explain that this is all just getting started, right? We have a long way to go on this, but they are about to enter the Depo phase. First, you have the nice requests. Hey, can you work with us? And if they say no, send another one, maybe a third one. Okay, maybe a subpoena. All right, maybe contempt. We've already gone down that road with the FBI Director Christopher Wray over the FD 1023. And so Comer says they've already got their first witness lined up who is going to be testifying. You know his name, but stick around and we'll talk about exactly who that is in the final segment when we talk about Hunter and the first person who will be deposed by Congress in his case. So we've got a lot to get to, my friends, and we want to invite you to become a member. If you were a member, this morning we had a separate conversation about some foreign stuff. We talked about what's going on in China, and the United States issued a travel advisory, basically a warning, saying reconsider your travel to China. And it was actually a wild change in what's happening there. Their laws are such that there are exit bans. So in other words, if you're a U.S. citizen and they have something they need from you, they'll let you into the country, but they won't let you out of the country. And they just justify it however they care to justify it. So interesting stuff. We also read through a French law, literally read through the law in French, translated it over to to English, and we got to see that they have a new effort to activate your cell phones, right? So they can just turn your cameras on whenever they want, when they think you're a terrorist or something like that. Literally turn your microphones on, turn your camera on to identify you. Passed by their so-called Senate by 80 to 24. So absolutely nuts. That's what we talked about with our members on our members-only morning stream over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We try to provide a lot of value and a lot of fun for our members. We do extra members only streams. We hit things like the Trump docket. We talk about, today we're going to hit the docket on the show, but there's also smaller updates that don't make it to the show. We talk about the other cases. We talk about the committee letters. We hit up Chuck Grassley this morning and others. We also have a private Telegram group for our members. So when the live stream ends, the chat goes on and on, my friends. And we would love to have you join. We're experimenting with a bunch of stuff on Locals. You're going to see some changes and some posts and some articles and a lot of cool stuff because they're releasing cool stuff. So we'd love to have you join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes, I mean, the real, real juicy steaks of the show, we got to eat our greens. We have to be properly nutrified and healthified and get our field of greens because we all would like to lose some of those leftover pounds from the holidays, from pandemic, all of that stuff. But we've all seen the ads for the weight loss pills and the fad diets. They're everywhere, right? But they just don't work. We're sick of them. But you know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, and the weight would probably just fall right off. But, I know vegetables, a lot of work, and fruit kind of goes bad all the time, kind of a pain to prepare. Field of Greens is a great solution. It is a science-backed formula, specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product, and proper nutrition reboots your metabolism, so you burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand that is backed by a better health promise. Yes, you will look and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come the next time you see your doctor at your regular checkup. He's just going to say, well, you're doing much better. You look healthier. You've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. We're going to know it's Field of Greens, and we're going to know that you save 15% off your first order when you went over there, loaded up your cart with all sorts of good stuff. And I would really encourage you to just check it out. If you doubt what I'm saying, just go read the ingredients. At fieldofgreens.com, you'll see, okay, there's a bunch of good stuff in here, and it's all organic and real organic, and it's all great. So check it out, fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use code Robert at checkout. All right, so it's time to get into business on the date. Donald Trump's assistant, a man who was really at Trump's side through a lot of the allegations underway in the Trump prosecution, has now been arraigned. We already covered Donald Trump's arraignment some time ago, but Walt, the man seen here, has had some time getting local counsel and getting his arraignment scheduled and completed, but that is now done. And we're going to go through exactly what happened because this is Trump's only co-defendant in this case. They were both charged together, and the allegations are that Trump was orchestrating all of this, move the boxes, conceal this, conceal that. And this Walt individual was the person who helped facilitate it. He was essentially a co-conspirator in the case. So his new lawyer is now Sasha Dadan as local counsel. We'll take a look at the notice of appearance as well as the court minutes. But first, let's get a little bit of background over from Bloomberg and see what they have to say for us. They tell cooperates with us, it's more likely that there will be a good outcome for you. So that was taking place today. Now, it's Walt, his personal assistant, but they also call him a valet. An alleged co-conspirator has been arraigned. It's a pretty simple proceeding. We're going to go through the minute entries. It's about 4 minutes. 5 minutes are very fast. But Walt is a former military valet, followed Trump from the White House, became his personal aide at Mar-a-Lago. Brought on former defender Sasha Dadan, a former public defender who's based in Fort Pierce. We'll take a look at her website. Small city about 130 miles north of Miami. Nauta appeared before a federal judge in Miami, formally entered his plea, allowed free on his personal recognizance, pending the trial. The arraignment had been delayed a number of times. They called Dadan. She declined to comment by phone, but she joined Stanley Woodward, and he also declined to comment. Trump has already pleaded not guilty. There is a 38-count indictment. Nauta is described as the body man, right? And presidents have this body man who's just always with them, has everything they need at their beck and call because they're traveling, flying around all over the place. And so I remember Obama had his, and it's just that person. It's that role. Nauta was allegedly directed by Trump to so-called move the boxes and conceal them. So the boxes were moved, and we'll go through a little bit more of this as the story evolves. But first, let's take a look at the actual minute entry that was submitted by the court. You can see here, it is only a single page, not much to go through. It's a form that we've already seen, something very similar that we saw with the Trump arraignment. The date on this, 7/6, it's in Cannon's courtroom, but it's not being conducted by Judge Cannon. Edwin Torres is doing the arraignment here, and as usual, it's very, very brief. You see time in court, it's 4 minutes. It's very short. And they started 11:01:39, so probably scheduled for 11. Everybody's filing in their seats. Boom, quick arraignment. And they're in and out. Not a long proceeding. Time started 11 a.m. Waltine Nauta All the prosecutors were there. We're very familiar with them. Jay Bratt, David Harbach, Michael Thacker, the defense being led by Sasha and Stanley. Now the charges: conspiracy to obstruct justice. He moved the boxes. Withholding of a document or record. He should have given the documents back, and corruptly concealing a document after they were demanded. There was no bond. He's been released on his personal recognizance. And this is something we've always wondered about. Trump, same story here. They're not supposed to have contact with anybody who's a part of the investigation, but that's about it. You see that these are other options on the form. All right, so we're in sort of a favorable jurisdiction right now in Florida. But what happens when we go over to DC and we get judges like we've seen in other trials? For example, in the E. Jean Carroll trial, what happens if we got a judge who's in that similar vein? Do you think if they're dealing with a so-called leader of an insurrection, which is what Trump is going to be prosecuted under, or something very similar to that, is going to be let out on his personal recognizance? This is a document possession crime. This isn't overthrowing a country allegation. So maybe in a very similar case, they actually do post a bond, or they post no bond, or they require him to surrender his passport, or they say, Trump, you've got to report to pretrial services once a week and by phone, and once a month in person. And you've got to do urine testing. And you can't have firearms. And you have to be done on ankle electronic monitoring. And be home by 8 o'clock every night, Trump. Or Walt. Well, I don't know. I never thought Trump would be indicted in the first place, but I think when you take this over to DC, maybe. We'll see. Now, Sasha Dadan, this is the record from the court. So as the attorneys stood up, appearances, please, everybody, yeah, Your Honor, Sasha Dadan on behalf of the defense, Your Honor, Jay Bratt on behalf of the government, blah, blah, blah. Says Sasha has filed a permanent notice of appearance. We'll take a quick look at that. And another motion for pro hoc vice status, which means Stanley Woodward is probably going to be the lead attorney on the case, but he's not actually licensed in this jurisdiction. So he needs somebody to represent him. He needs somebody to basically sponsor him in court. So he filed his motion. The court directs the clerk to accept any filings for Ms. Dadan. So the court accepts this new lawyer immediately with an expiration date. Anything Dadan needs to do to update her registration can be done with the process in the meantime. Defendant arraigned. And these are very brief. Sometimes in an arraignment, what they'll do is read the full indictment. So remember, it's 38 counts, and Walt had several of them. But did they read those? Hey, Walt, you've been charged with this. Do you know what this obstruction charge is? And they could read all of the text of the obstruction. They waived that. They just said, no, Your Honor, we don't need to waive it. We've already talked about it. How do you plead? Not guilty entered. Jury trial demanded. Judge orders discovery to be exchanged. And we're done. Due Process Protections Act is issued, comply with that, and then set new dates immediately over 4 minutes, in and out. So we also saw that there were 2 appearances entered. This is the one that got submitted by Sasha Dadan. This is the notice of permanent appearance submitted in the case U.S. versus Trump and Walt. Counsel acknowledges about advising the defendant. Fee disputes, money is not going to be a basis from getting off the case. Acknowledged by both Walt and Sasha, submitted as a notice of appearance. We also see this is the pro hoc vice designation request. This was submitted by Stanley Woodward. He says that I've got to get this submitted because I'm not licensed to practice in the Southern District of Florida, but I am in DC and Maryland. And so Sasha is going to be representing me. In accordance, I've already filed my admission fee. This is where you can contact me. And now we move to have me entered. And so this has been accepted, it looks like, by the court. And so Trump has his lawyers and Walt has his lawyers. a little bit more about Sasha Dadan. She's over on the internet. This is her website. She is a Florida bar licensed attorney, began her legal career at the Public Defender's Office, and we love our public defenders here. Shout out to the public defenders. As an assistant public defender, 3,000 clients, felonies, misdemeanors, DUIs, juvenile cases. She got favorable results, writing, research, while at the public defenders, received 100 hours of continued legal education. This is a major benefit of being a public defender, by the way, in addition to, insane benefits and stuff like that. But the continuing legal education is awesome. I had the opportunity to go to a bunch of public defender CLEs, and when I was actually early in my career in Phoenix, they had one of the best expert witnesses, basically on retainer, for the PD's office. And so this expert would come in and give these massive lectures, and I would just go sit in them and like, man, this is like gold, baby. This is gold. I was just like a hungry, fresh lawyer, soaking it up. So it was really, really something that, sometimes you don't even get at private firms because they don't have that, type of resource. Anyways, so she's compassionate about every case. She's active in her community, member of various bars, fluent in Spanish. And so shout out to Sasha Dadan. All right, just pausing for a shout out to Sasha Dadan. All right, a lot of lawyers out there, wouldn't want to extend themselves to associate with a case like this because it is, a big possibility of a problem that she'll be attacked for just simply adhering to the presumption of innocence and defending due process. And, the lawyers who were even remotely associated with Trump, many of them are having their licenses attacked by various groups around this country. So shout out to Sasha Dadan and other lawyers who are out there working on these cases, because we know that their practices will come under increased scrutiny. Now there's more. Apparently there was another filing update. Trump had boxes in a storage room. I know. Mediaite, these people. Look at this. 6,000 comments. Woo, man, they get excited about this stuff over there. So new photo and video emerge from an unsealed search warrant. Apparently some little portions of that original search warrant that we reviewed here was unsealed, and it was the photo portion. Why? Because the photos are already out there. This is no longer necessary. It's already public. This is the photo. Do you see these photos? Look at these boxes. I am speechless. They've got things in them. I don't know what are in there. Neither does the government, apparently. The warrant says the purpose of the photograph was to show that the former president, that the volume of boxes that remained in the storage room. All right. The storage photo captures 61 boxes located in the storage room. Okay. Well, there was 31 different classified documents. So if there are 6 that he got charged for, there's not even 61 documents that are charged as crimes. So apparently about half of those absolutely cannot possibly have a classified document in them unless the documents are cut in half. So who cares? It's like, what are you talking about? Can you tell me which boxes? Did any of these boxes actually have a classified document? That's if you believe that they even have a legitimate case in the first place, if that is illegal in and of itself. Now, I have long been saying that the documents that are of the presidency, created for the president during his presidency, are his documents. And I reference the executive power of the president in the United States Constitution, Article 2, Section 2. Talks about the president being able to get the opinions in writing of his executives. And so it is his by virtue of being the root commander-in-chief of the country. But that being said, they try to show you that this is just to become propaganda in the court of public opinion, They can't prove that any of these boxes are criminal boxes. And they want you to think that they are. So even just by numbers, okay, 61 of those located in the storage room. We know that there were about 30 documents. And I've had questions about this. If they were bound up, if these documents were bound together, like one pamphlet could be like 30 documents, in other words. So they released this photograph and they're just going hog wild over there. Hopefully they enjoy themselves. Now, there are other issues, of course. They're saying that Walt was a part of the conspiracy to move the boxes. And they say they've got surveillance footage. Again, moving boxes day before the visit. Again, okay, you're allowed to move boxes. Were these boxes that had classified documents in them? That's, again, saying that you think that the possession of the documents is illegal in the first place. Surveillance footage showed that Walt moved dozens of boxes in the days before the DOJ visited. The footage was among other evidence that they used to justify the search, according to new details of the warrant. Nauta appeared in court for an arraignment, pled not guilty, and they say that details come to light hours after a federal magistrate judge ordered the department to make more portions of the search warrant available. 3-page ruling. Reinhart stopped short of granting the request for media organizations, but they did agree that some portions could be made public. The agent writes that Trump liked to store accumulated documents in the boxes, and the 38-count indictment alleged that he held on to them that he knew he shouldn't have retained, and that he directed other people to move them around. Prosecutors have alleged that the security cameras showed Nauta moving 64 boxes out of the storage room and later returning 30 of them. Okay, were there documents inside? Can they correlate them across one another? Federal judge later went on to rule that attorney-client privilege needed to be breached as the investigation moves forward. So they are now scheduling a deadline in this case. Motions are due by July 24th, 2023, and there will be a lot more as Walt Nauta joins Trump in the prosecution. Now we have more on this case. Walt Nauta's trial is now scheduled right alongside Donald Trump's. That's going to be in August of 2023, which is very, very soon. And we are curious as to whether this trial will actually happen. I think it's probably a long shot. But what we see here is that Judge Aileen Cannon issued an omnibus order. Now that Walt Nauta, Trump's personal assistant and valet, has been arraigned, there is a second set of instructions that have come out for the court. And Walt's team is going to be complying with this. And it looks like trial has been confirmed for very soon. Now, Trump's team is going to file a bunch of responses. Walt's team is going to do the same. But you see here, this is the most recent from the court, 6 pages. It is an omnibus order setting the trial date and establishing, once again, pretrial instructions and sentencing proceedings. And this is coming fast. Remember, we've got a bunch of documents, classified security clearances that they're going to be having to jump through to get people to review this stuff. And so we're expecting, even special counsel wanted this thing to go back to December, but Trump's team has hasn't agreed to that. And so as it stands, trial is still scheduled for 2 weeks, commencing on August 14th with a calendar call to be held in August 8th. It's like 30 days from now, man. All hearings are going to be held in Florida. Modifications to be made necessary as this matter proceeds. They say any testing of any of your electronic equipment must take place prior to the calendar call, and all pretrial motions must be due by July 24th, 2023. And we often here spend a lot of time on these motions in limine because they're so much fun. They are efforts to exclude evidence, exclude witnesses. We remember in the Proud Boys trial, the defense wanted to talk about all of these government undercover informants, And of course, they filed motions to talk about it, and the government filed motions to exclude it. So we want to talk about all this stuff. But those motions are going to be due very quick. Now, in reality, I actually think these things are going to be extended very far. But it's just amazing that we're holding these dates right now. Absent leave of the court, each party is limited to filing one motion in limine, meaning you get one argument, one motion filing, bound all your arguments in there together. Trump and Walt have to file their motions together unless there's a clear conflict of a position. Motions may not, without leave of the court, exceed the page limits. And it's further ordered that if you want subpoenas for witnesses, you got to get those going right now. If you want to go demand people come in and testify, those got to be filed like in 2 weeks prior to the first scheduled trial period. Like, we're going, baby. It says the parties shall file speedy trial reports every 21 days, although we've got trial as now scheduled in about 6 weeks. All responses pursuant to the local rules must be introduced. Counsel shall be prepared to conduct a limited voir dire. So this is called jury selection. So let's say we fast forward and the calendar call is on August 8th and we have jury selection the following week. Lawyers shall be able to, and I think this is probably going to be the same rule, even if this is continued out. So they have limited voir dire. Prior to the calendar call, each party may file no more than 10 proposed questions, including any subparts. So Trump's team will get 10 questions, government gets 10 questions, the court will not permit the backstriking of jurors. Prior to the calendar call, the parties shall submit proposed jury instructions, including substantive changes in a proposed form. They don't need to agree on it, but where there are disagreements, they've got to cite to authority. The parties should identify the jury instructions, and prior to the calendar calls, I want all of our exhibits marked into evidence. I want a list of all proposed witnesses. The government labels theirs GX1, defense labels theirs DX2, and so on. And no later than the first day of trial, the government shall provide the court with a tabbed binder. The judge wants it in a 3-ring binder, all exhibits that were filed. If there's going to be a change of plea, it has to happen soon, prior to 5 p.m. on the last business day before trial scheduled to begin, so probably on a Friday. Any motions for a continuance of the trial, which I fully expect we'll see. I mean, the Jack Smith has already filed one, but Trump has not responded to that yet. If you want to continue this out, these are the reasons, or these are the methodologies by which you can do it. Set forth in your motion the following: details which constitute grounds for continuance under the law, including the complexity of the case, which I think is massive. The security clearance process. So the judge is giving them a, look, if you want, 90 days, 90 days, 90 days, whatever. Security clearances, the anticipated impact of the Classified Information Procedures Act. In other words, all this stuff is not going to be done in the next 6 weeks. And indicate whether the reasons served by granting the continuance outweigh the defendant's constitutional and statutory rights to a speedy trial. And we often talk about the right to a speedy trial. I don't imagine that Trump is going to ride that hard right now, because I think his interests are also served by extending this out, pushing it past the election. If Trump wins the election, or when, then he is able to come out and pardon himself on all of these charges, and the whole thing goes away. The filing by counsel of a notice of unavailability, which I think is the better defense. They say that the filing by counsel of a notice of unavailability by motion must follow the local rules. If any party wants to introduce transcripts, do it prior to the calendar call. All anticipated Jenks Act material, which is discovery, these are documents that the government relies upon in their case, shall be turned over to the defense counsel no later than the morning of the first day of trial. The material shall include a face sheet acknowledging receipt, and for the purposes must be filed by the government no later than a certain period after the trial. The court parties are notifying the court if an interpreter is required. Follow the local rules in your filings. including with exhibits. If this matter proceeds to sentencing, if they're convicted, we'll deal with that later. The court has discretion to not consider untimely objections, and if you're looking for upward and downward departures, submit those in writing. So, this is the Omnibus Order signed by Judge Eileen Cannon, U.S. District Judge. And the big takeaway on this is that we are still on schedule right now, as of now, for trial next month, man. In August 8th, a calendar call, and August 14th, an actual trial date. So, as I said, I fully expect these to move and be postponed. Even the government doesn't want this thing to happen up until December. And so Trump's team will respond. And because this is such a complicated case, this fast track path is, I don't think, something that's going to stand. We've got all of these things that they're going to need to comply with. Security clearance process, I think that they're going to be challenging each individual document and the categorization of each document. This is classified, not classified. This is a presidential record. This is not a presidential record. And I hope they also make the bigger argument, which is that every single one of those documents is the product of the executive branch creating or demanding documents to do their job. And those are documents that are possessed by the executive, and they're therefore Trump's documents. And I think that there's strong argument that's founded in the Constitution to support that. So this is the omnibus filing. We know that there is going to be a motions deadline by July 24th. Otherwise, trial is scheduled. Trump's team will file motions responding to the government's continuance, and we will continue to follow and see what trial looks like. Thank you, my friends, for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll see you as this case unfolds. All right, and now let's turn our attention over to the ongoing prosecution, which is happening right now. And it's coming in Arizona. Special Counsel Jack Smith is now going after the false electors, or the fake electors, as they call them, the alternative slate of electors that were being contemplated in the 2020 election. And he's here in Arizona coming after Secretary of States and other representatives who may have been involved in the conversations. You see Jack Smith here. Donald Trump had an interesting comment about him, and Christie is reacting to that comment, saying that maybe there is some correlation between Jack Smith's investigation and that dime bag that was found in the White House. But we're going to go through the story about what's happening in Arizona and then see specifically what this guy, Rusty Bowers, which you may have remembered from the election. He was somebody who was in the news a lot here in phone calls about what was happening in Arizona as this conversation was happening about alternative slates of electors and whether the legislature could sort of take back the outcome of the election and vote on an alternative ballot for the Electoral College. So this is Rusty Bowers. We'll hear from him in a minute, but a little bit of background on the subpoenas that went out from Jack Smith's office to Arizona. You see, this comes over from Axios. They tell us that Jack Smith subpoenaed the Arizona Secretary of State's office recently over Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. That led to the insurrection, they say. They say Biden won Arizona by 10,000 votes. Oh, that's what they say. It was a focal point of the Trump campaign and its Republican allies who filed multiple lawsuits. Washington Post reported that Trump in 2020 attempted to pressure Arizona Governor Doug Ducey to overturn the presidential election results by finding fraudulent votes. Also, apparently, told Mike Pence to call Ducey and convince him. And there were other people like Paul Smith, a spokesman for the Secretary of State called Adrian Fontes, who's our current Secretary of State, said that the office got 2 subpoenas from Smith. Wonder what he was asking for. One during the current administration and one in the previous, when guess what? When Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs was the Secretary of State. Isn't it amazing? Katie Hobbs was running the show when Arizona conveniently went over to Joe Biden. Shock. And then when Katie Hobbs runs for office, she wins against Kari Lake. Amazing. Even though she was running the office at the time of both elections. Now she's the governor, and now they're subpoenaing Adrian Fontes. And so we've got a whole institution of people who are just, I imagine, just bending over backwards to give Jack Smith whatever he wants to serve whatever narrative they're working together to create. So, article says, he said that the office complied with the subpoena it received during the current administration through its law firm. The subpoena sought information about lawsuits filed by the Trump campaign and the Arizona Republican Party chair that contested the election. Other officials said that they faced pressure from Trump. And we're going to listen to Rusty Bowers. And it's not a good interview. And he details what he talked to the special counsel about, and then he leaves a conclusion for Trump. But Rudy Giuliani was also a part of this. And apparently Rusty got a direct phone call from Trump. So we'll see if he is called as a witness to testify. Smith is also investigating Trump's handling of classified documents. A grand jury indicted Trump with over a dozen federal charges related to obstruction and classified info. Of course, we know Trump pleaded not guilty to those charges. So Arizona is now getting subpoenas. And we have this guy, Rusty Bowers, who was here in Arizona and one of the people who was getting those phone calls from Giuliani and from Trump. And he was on with Caitlin Collins from CNN. And he gave this interview where he articulates some of what happened during those phone calls. And this might be actual witness type testimony that we see in a trial if this guy is called by Jack Smith to testify against Donald Trump. And it very well may be the case, because we're talking about pressure, coercion, trying to do things illegal, saying that people are telling him no, but he's putting the pressure on them to coerce them to do things. This is Rusty Bowers. This is what it sounds like.
Have you been subpoenaed by the special counsel?
That's a great question. I'm hesitant to talk about any subpoenas, etc., but I have been interviewed by the FBI.
In the January 6th investigation? Or excuse me, in the effort to overturn the election results?
Correct. It was 4 hours of
4 hours
of a discussion that they had with me. Very professional.
When was that interview?
It was couple of months ago, 3 months ago. About the same time frame, actually.
Can you tell us what you talked about? I mean, this is news. We did not know that you had spoken to Jack Smith's team. Can you talk about what you offered to them? What information?
I offered them nothing new. They seemed to have a good grasp on all of the testimony that I'd given.
And Bowers had spoken at the January 6th fake select committee garbage hearings. They brought him in to testify, and a lot of that was really monotonous and most of the same, but they got a lot of his testimony and they're just corroborating it with him here.
And all of the interviews that I had given to the Arizona Republic and people from the Washington Post, they were very aware of the January 6th committee testimony that I gave. There may have been something that I said that was of interest, but I don't remember anything standing out that had not been mentioned before.
Did you turn over any documents to them?
That I don't remember. I know I gave a lot of documents to my attorney, and I still have a lot of documents, but I don't know if they're important or not. I have the proof, whatever that meant. That was the proof that I'd asked for, but it was hardly the proof that I sought.
What kind of documents was it? Emails, text messages, phone records, anything like that?
The players with the Trump administration I want the names of all of the illegal aliens. I want the names of all of the dead people. I want the names of all of the service people who had their documents stolen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they said, we've got them, we'll give them to you. I said, that's the proof I need in order to have any semblance of the necessary threshold that you do something this big. Now we're talking what, a year and a half ago, and or more, and that never came. But I did finally get what was they considered proof, and it was a couple of letters from legal professors. It was a term paper from one of my colleagues on this theory of law. It was several things that were entertaining, and a bunch of tear sheets for ballots. We're in the ballot entries and exits of the ballots in their 200 ballot lots came into the elections officials. There was no names, nothing else. And so I tongue squarely in my cheek, I say it's the proof.
All right, so just coming up for air for a second on this. Caitlin Collins was asking him about what documents he turned over to special counsel. Wait a minute, you talked to them? Wait a minute, for 4 hours? What? And what documents did you give them? We had no idea about this. So she asks about what was turned over, but he starts answering a different question. He's answering what documents he wanted to get from Trump's team. So it's a little bit confusing. So he's telling Trump's team, okay, if you're saying that there was a problem in our election, I need the illegals. I need the deads. I need the double votes. I need the names of the people to show that there's a margin between the 10,000 votes that Joe Biden is up by, allegedly, in order to do something about this. And so then now he's explaining that the documents that they got, Trump said, we got the proof. They got the documents over. That's sent over to him. Okay. Well, none of that sounds illegal. I mean, no, I don't know what the problem with any of that is. Right? These are phone calls between election campaigns and different secretaries of state, different representatives, different people in the different states. I'd imagine this happens in every single campaign in every election ever. So once again, I don't find this to be problematic. Now, this is going to go on a little bit, including with phone calls from Trump, and we've got questions about those calls and whether they were recorded and what was actually said there. He's not going to get into that for us. But you're allowed to have conversations about elections. You're allowed to make phone calls. That in and of itself, in my mind, doesn't cross to obstruction. Otherwise, every single politician who's ever called anybody in their local government about an election would also be crossing that line, no? This is the point, is you're allowed in an adversarial system to push the line. You're allowed to ask your lawyer questions like, what if I say those drugs weren't mine? What if I say those documents aren't here? What if I do? You're allowed to explore these things. You're allowed to call and say, hey, Rusty, any illegal document voters you found? But let's continue.
And that's all the proof I ever got.
I'm assuming they also asked you about that phone call with Trump and Giuliani directly, where you said, they called you after you had left church one day and were basically asking you to do things you said you couldn't do.
This is where we might get into that
That's correct.
coercion.
They did. We went over that briefly. We went over the next call. He called me twice. The second time only from Trump. And
second call was a Trump call.
And none of those bore resemblance to what he said I said in that email before the January 6th commission. But I guess he's a free citizen of the empire. He can say what he wants.
Given they asked you about Trump, is it clear to you that this investigation is focused directly on the former president? Or what sense did you get of the direction of that investigation?
I think it's broad because there's a lot of information about attorneys that worked with them, about Mr. Giuliani that made the calls and visited us, and other members of his team, who they were, when the meetings were, what was discussed in those meetings or in that meeting. And so I presume that all of them are involved.
Wow.
How that shakes out as threshold evidence, I don't know. I just dabble with a paintbrush, but
we've heard that they were looking at other attorneys. Did they ask you about Sidney Powell, Kenneth Cheeseborough, any of these other attorneys that we know that had been a focus of Jack Smith, something they've been looking into?
Mr. Eastman,
John Eastman,
was that we mentioned specifically. I don't know if Mr. Epstein is an attorney, but he also called, and I believe we discussed his phone call to me later, much later.
Can you refresh our memory on the call? Because you're talking about Boris Epstein, who is someone who is still often seen with Trump. He was in court with Trump in New York when he got indicted here in Manhattan. Can you remind us the nature of that call that he had to you?
There was a bill that one of my former colleagues, Mr. Fincham, had introduced into the legislature that he wanted me to hear. And it would take the ballot outcome of the 2020 election and put that outcome on the ballot for the people of Arizona to vote on, whether they still felt that way or not. It would, if they voted against that election, then it would be thrown out. That was the essence of this bill. And I said, I'm not going to hear that. Well, let's just say I won't hear that bill. And Mr. Epstein was trying to convince me that that was a good bill and that I should do it. And we had he had 5 or 6 shots at trying to find a pivot that he could get me to accept that it was a good idea. None of them were good ideas.
Okay, so again, that's just generic lobbying. You're allowed to say, hey, Arizona and the Arizona public, the people who vote here, which is yours truly, including, we have our doubts about the election. We don't think it was conducted properly, and we would like a referendum on this, and we want the legislature to pass a bill. All right, you might say that's a long shot, and maybe nobody's going to do it, and maybe you say it's a boneheaded idea, and you might say it's undemocratic, and you might say it's a bunch of things, but it's just a suggestion to pass a bill that would go through the normal procedures that would then allow the American populace to vote if it was a good idea. And if that's what the American people, the Arizonan people really wanted, then he would just submit it and it would go through the formal things. And he says it's a dumb idea, which again happens, I would imagine, all the time. I would imagine every single day the politicians across this country get phone calls. Hey, you want to build this bridge somewhere? You want to do this thing or license this thing or what? They say, no. I'm like, no, I can't do this for you or that for you or whatever. No, nice idea. Try again. But that's not criminal. I mean, unless it's Donald Trump, of course, because everything he does is criminal, including apparently leaving dime bags at Hunter's crack party.
And I wouldn't do it. But that was our conversation, was just to support the Fincham effort, and I would not do that.
Okay.
I have a little more respect for what I do than that.
Did you see that as him pressuring you?
Him being Epstein,
yes.
He never threatened me in the least.
There you go.
Asking, he said, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And finally I said, Mr. Epstein, we're big kids. I'm not going to do this.
Okay.
I'm not going to.
There you go.
He said, well, if I can get you the proof, will you? I said, I've been promised that proof for going on 2 years now.
Great.
You suddenly have it? And he said, yeah, I got it. We can get it to you. I said, well, you put that on my desk in the next 3 days. That would be an interesting piece of pile to see. Make sure it's what I asked for, type of thing. And I told you what I got. It was, some committee testimony from Congress.
Yeah, so they say, we'll send you the proof. They don't actually have much more that he wants to see. They send him some more stuff. Nothing happens. But no threats.
Paper,
no
couple
threats,
of letters,
no coercion.
And a bunch of tear sheets, all of which didn't prove anything. Proved that there were tear sheets, proved that somebody had a hearing, but not the proof you need for doing something so incredible as what we were faced with.
Do you think what Rudy Giuliani, Boris Epstein, any of these other attorneys, do you think what they did rises to the level of criminal behavior in your view?
That's above my pay grade. I don't decide what's criminal or not.
Do you feel like a victim?
I think America can decide and will. And
yeah, I think he's right. They will charge him.
They did, in fact. And they may do it again. I hope it doesn't go that far.
You hope it doesn't go that far?
What?
Sure, I do.
Charges or election?
I hope that I have a better.
We learned today that Trump has raised $35 million in the second quarter. It's basically double what he raised in the first quarter.
Hurt for them.
Obviously, his legal troubles are piling up.
Yikes.
He's still claiming he won an election that he lost. You say he effectively ended your political career. Does he deserve the GOP nomination? And if he gets it, would you vote for him?
Here we go.
Oh, I've already made very clear about that last point. Very clear. The oval next to his name will never be filled on my ballot. And that's up to the party. If they think that that's what they have to do, then they are effectively throwing away a whole bunch of votes that will not
go to Trump, he says. All right, so you can see, all right, not a fan of Trump. And all the way up until that end there, it really, well, even this entire interview, he talks a lot about phone calls and about some efforts to introduce legal efforts, like legal maneuvers, legal bills, legal statutes, do legal things. Never felt threatened, never felt coerced. Not a fan of Trump, though. Not going to be supporting him again. So do we think that his testimony when he sat for 4 hours with the special counsel was good or bad for Trump? Even though in this interview, we don't identify any criminal conduct other than phone calls and simple lobbying and informational calls and alternative paths forward during an election, which I guarantee you, if you go back and look at what Hillary did on, let's say, election night 2016, I would bet that her team was making a bunch of frantic phone calls, calling everybody, Wisconsin and so on. Are you sure? There's not this, there's not that. I would guarantee you that there are calls, but she doesn't get charged for election obstruction or other things, or smashing her server or her classified documents with a hammer. So Rusty Bowers not voting for Trump, but all right, I still don't think that he's really identified any criminal conduct there. So why is the special counsel subpoenaing him and other people in Arizona, including the Secretary of State? Why? Doesn't make a lot of sense. Some people say that sometimes when people are not making sense, it might be because there's something wrong with them, or they might be on crack. That's what Donald Trump says. Here's what he posted on Truth Social. He said, "Does anybody really believe that the cocaine found in the White House, in the West Wing of the White House, very close to the Oval Office, is for the use of anyone other than Hunter and Joe?" But watch, the fake news media will start soon saying that the amount found was very small and it wasn't really cocaine, but rather common ground up aspirin, and the story will vanish. Has deranged Jack Smith, the crazy Trump-hating prosecutor, been seen in the area of the cocaine? He looks like a crackhead to me. That's Trump. Oh, man. You know, it's just a wild scene. There's not often times where you recommend your defendant call the prosecuting attorney crackheads. You know, it's not generally advisable. Yeah. I know how you feel about this prosecutor, but don't call him names. But this is not the ordinary prosecution. Trump is waging a battle in the court of public opinion. Why? Because the courts of law are corrupted. So he's going to be laying on more of this. And does it really matter? Not legally, but in terms of personal animosity, you better believe it. Jake Tapper was hoping Chris Christie would give him a different answer. He's like, can we charge Trump for that, Truth? Can we charge him with hurting Jack Smith's feelings under U.S. code? No, Jake, you can't do it. It's not advisable to call a prosecutor names as a general rule. But as a general rule, there's only one Trump, and this is a historical prosecution. And he does kind of look like a crackhead.
Mr. Trump is now calling Special Counsel Jack Smith a, quote, deranged man who, quote, looks like a crackhead. Beyond the propriety of that, from a legal point of view, do statements like that affect the case?
No, I mean, not really. I think, the only argument you could make is that it potentially affects a jury pool who's in South Florida reading this stuff and thinking,
no, you just say,
what
look at
the hell is he talking about?
Look at him, man.
I did a lot of drug cases when I was U.S. attorney.
You did a lot of drugs?
In New Jersey. I can guarantee people that there isn't one particular type of crackhead. There's not anyone who looks like a crackhead necessarily. Look, this is just what makes Donald Trump an unacceptable nominee for our party.
I don't know.
Because he says things like this without any regard for truth or falsity, without any regard for the propriety of it. But even
Chris, you just admitted crackheads are very unique looking. Crackheads come in all shapes and sizes, my man. So Trump could be true. It could be right. We don't know.
Worse yet, what does that do to help anyone other than him? My argument all along has been this race in 2024 for Donald Trump is all about Donald Trump. It's not about the American people. He doesn't give a damn about the American people.
Well, he doesn't want crackheads running the country like apparently is happening in the White House and the special counsel's office. So we'll continue to see what happens here in Arizona and elsewhere. But Jack Smith is really going after these alternative electors, these false electors, and the prosecution is going to continue to heat up. As Rusty Bauer says, he thinks it might extend into other people, including Trump's lawyers. And of course, we'll continue to cover, my friends. Thank you, as always, for subscribing. And thank you for inviting somebody else to come over and check out our channel and join us as we go live and cover all of this news and more. All right. And now let's turn over to the crackheads. Joe Biden and the crackheads in the White House. I think this is a shorter segment, but let's see what we've got here. The White House is now responding to the cocaine found on their grounds in the West Wing, but they're not giving us much more detail. In fact, they're actually denying a denial. We asked them, can we just confirm with you that the cocaine didn't belong to Hunter and Joe? Can you just issue a denial? And they said, no, we deny to deny it. We can't possibly do that. Why? Because of the Hatch Act. That answer is going to come over from Andrew Bates during a gaggle when the president was traveling. But that's just one part of the strangeness of this story, because we also learned that the initial reporting on this, where the cocaine was found originally, was not true. You're kidding me. The White House and the press and everybody reporting something would lie to us or not be accurate at the initial reporting. Here's what NBC tells us. Cocaine found in the White House was in a different location than previously reported. Well, that's weird. So that probably should prompt an investigation, right? I mean, why would somebody lie about that? The sources maintain that the area is highly trafficked, though, in keeping with the secretary's characterization on Wednesday. So Jean Karine came out and she said, you know, a lot of people come through here. This could be any crackhead. We've got so many crackheads running through this White House. We can't even keep track of them. And we also saw from Politico, they're like, you know, I mean, there's dime bags all over the place. What is, you want us to track them all down? And they can't get to the bottom of it. Meanwhile, if you remember that one January 6er who wore that black shirt with that little logo in white that they zoomed in on a telephoto lens from Kentucky, and they identified him and backtraced his IP address through 35 servers. They did it in 2 hours, and they arrested his whole family and then prosecuted Trump. Remember that situation that happened about 1,000 times? That's not a problem for them. But the one crackhead who drops a dime bag of cocaine, it's going to be a big problem. And they lie to us about where it was. The sources maintain the area is highly trafficked. We'll see. This is the report over from the White House correspondent who is there on scene. Let's cue this up. If we can play this.
Into trying to figure out who left that small bag of cocaine at the White House. NBC News has now learned the bag was found in the West Wing on Sunday, will now be tested for DNA and fingerprints, and the investigation could be completed by Monday. Joining me now is NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell. But Kelly, the big change is where this was found, and it was found by my observation, in a much more secure place, limited access place than that West Wing reception area. It's still a frequently trafficked place, but it's down near the Situation Room, right off West Executive, down below. And normal people, average people, just can't get in there, even with the entry from the Northwest Gate.
No.
Well,
they
let me bring you up to date with the reporting that I have. What we have learned is that there are, in fact, 2 West Wing entrances. You know that, I know that, but for the benefit of our audience. And now the investigation has progressed, and so they're saying the West Executive entrance, which, as you noted, is closer to the Situation Room and closer to the Navy mess, where there's the facilities for food and so forth. It is also next to West Executive Drive. That's where, for example, the vice president's vehicle is parked. However, it is a high traffic area, and by that I mean you do have people who work here in all kinds of jobs, not just political jobs, the military facilities, people who work for the operations of the White House, and they do have the tours that go through there if they are among the private tours with staffers as sort of a sponsored member. So very high traffic. The fact that it's close to the Situation Room is certainly notable.
Yes.
We had earlier been told that it was one level above in also a lobby area in the West Wing, closer to where the Oval Office is. This is down below. The other important news is we had been told the investigation could take a couple of weeks. They're now revising that timeline and saying by Monday, perhaps even earlier, they anticipate having reviewed all the important material they need to review. DNA and fingerprinting testing has been going on. I'm told additional testing is happening today. And the key thing is that multiple officials are cautioning that it is unlikely and certainly possible that there would be a resolution to this, meaning forensic evidence found that could identify an individual. Scanning the video, doing the testing, but they are preparing us for a result that will be no conclusive evidence found. And that is still subject to change as the work continues, but that should give people a sense of where this is. They are looking at what's available. They're saying it's a very small bag, limited ability to test it, because as tests are done, whether it's DNA or fingerprinting or other scientific type processes in the lab, you further degrade that sample, making it harder to get information from.
Give me a break. These people are letting one of their own get away with it. They know who it is. They're not going to tell us. They're preparing us for a non-conclusive result. You have got to be kidding me. What do we have the Secret Service for? This is the question we keep asking. If they can't secure the congressional building from some rioters, with the whole FBI, Homeland Security, Capitol Police, Metro Police, and all of the other intelligence agencies that we spend trillions of dollars on, if they can't secure with the Secret Service, the White House, and their security is so bad that with fingerprint evidence and DNA evidence and camera footage in one of the most secure places in the entire stinking world, they can't come to a conclusion. These people are covering up for their own cokeheads, man.
And of course, they're scanning the videos. This was found in a cubby off of the lobby area of that pathway in. And as you know, often security cameras and so forth are getting the big wide areas. And an official said a camera would have had to have been trained in on the cubbies and be able to see from the right angle an individual dropping that packet. So expectations are being lowered about an eventual conclusion here that would lead to an identity and then even the potential for prosecution at a misdemeanor level for the amount of drug we're talking about. At the same time, this is unusual, to say the least. Officials say they don't have any record of an illicit drug like this being found in the West Wing or in the White House before. And so it is truly rare, and it has gotten a lot of interest in the public. But again, the headline really is very well-traveled area that we knew, different location than what we had been saying, and now the timeline for the investigation narrowing. Andrea?
Yeah, they lied, and they're going to close.
With Dexcom G7, you can achieve diabetes results.
Oh, gosh. More pharmaceutical ads. Oh, gosh. My head almost exploded. They're everywhere. All right, so the point here is it's just amazing. Okay, so a couple things changed. One, they lied to us about the location. Number two, there was an order that the long drawn out investigation, it was somebody's brilliant idea to say, well, it's going to take a long time to investigate this, right? That was the original playbook. Say it's going to take a while. Tell Karine Jean-Pierre that we don't have any answers on that one. Secret Service is investigating. But then they went, oh, crap. Then every day they're going to ask us about who is delivering cocaine in the White House, and is Hunter still sniffing around on the in the West Wing, in the Oval Office with Joe. Nobody knows. So they changed strategies and they said, all right, now we got to conclude this thing like now. And what's the answer? No conclusion. No conclusion. And so they're going to get it done. Fingerprints, DNA, everything's going to be done lickety split. All the cameras investigated in the next day or two. They'll probably drop it on Friday because it's going to be a nice day when they always drop their Friday night drops. They'll find out inconclusive, and the whole thing will be buttoned up, and will never know. Meanwhile, other people who even have a hint of cocaine, if they get pulled over by the police, for example, you get pulled over by the police, you got cocaine in there, Arizona, felony, right? Felony. Arrest you, impound your car, charge you with a felony immediately for having cocaine, or even a prescription that's not prepared for you, right? You just have a bottle, you have some pills that aren't yours. Boom, felony. Same thing all across this country. But the White House has a totally different standard of justice, and they don't even investigate their own kind for having illegal felony level drugs in the house of the president. So we also know that they're not going to answer any questions about this, but what's shocking is they're not even going to deny it. You could easily have the press deputy secretary, this guy, Andrew Bates, come out and say, obviously, it wasn't Hunter Biden's. Obviously, it's not Joe Biden's coke, okay? That's a ridiculous question. Obviously, it's not theirs. Problem is, they can't say that. Instead, they're going to hide behind this, which is called the Hatch Act. And you hear Karine talk about this all the time. I can't comment on that because of the Hatch Act. Well, I went over to the U.S. Department of the Interior and to their ethics office. And as we listen to this clip from the press secretary, we're going to ask ourselves, is anything in this list justification for not giving us an answer about cocaine in the White House? Not really. They say Hatch Act rules tell us that a federal employee may not use his official authority to interfere with something that might impact the result of an election. Okay. So like putting pressure, prohibited activities are like participating in political activities, coercing people to participate, soliciting, or volunteering. All right, we're going to listen. Does any of that apply? Also, you can't do fundraising. You can't do partisan political activity at work. Got it. And these restrictions apply. You also can't use privately owned vehicles and so on. Okay, that's the Hatch Act. Nothing in here says you can't answer questions about cocaine in the White House. But that is exactly what they do. They can't even deny it. This should have been an easy layup where they just walk right out, 100% not anybody who's in the White House. But the problem is, facts probably don't align with that.
One more, former President Trump has made some pretty wild posts recently on social media. One of them was that the cocaine found in the White House had belonged to either the president or his son. Are you willing to say that that's not the case, that they don't belong to them?
I don't have a response to that because we have to be careful about the Hatch Act.
What?
What I will say is that I have noticed there does seem to be some increasing frustration coming from that corner in general. And I think it is probably rooted in the contrast between their substantive policy records.
I can't answer whether the cocaine belonged to Joe or Hunter because of politics. Right.
The case that they don't belong to them.
I don't have a response to that because we have to be careful about the Hatch Act. What I will say is that I have noticed there does seem to be some increasing frustration coming from that corner.
I don't even think we need these people because they don't answer any questions at all. They can't even come out and hit a simple layup to deny that those drugs were Hunter's or Joe's. And so the only thing that we conclude is a concept called re ipsa loquitur. This is a concept in the law that says the thing speaks for itself. If you don't have any evidence, or you have enough evidence to show that the thing meets these three criteria, then the thing just happens. You can say that it establishes a presumption and the other side has to rebut it. So I'm not explaining this very well. But if something is an incident of the type that does not generally happen, and it was caused by something that was in the defendant's control, and the other side didn't contribute to the case, there's a concept called re ipsa loquitur. It's the thing, in Latin, the thing speaks for itself, is what it means. And it doesn't necessarily apply to this case because it's not a tort, but it's an interesting concept in the law. The thing speaks for itself. We don't know exactly who brought in these drugs, but we do know there's a crackhead in the White House. And so before, in the White House, we haven't had crackheads. And then when we didn't have, at least official crackheads, and when we didn't have official crackheads, we also didn't have cocaine in the White House. But now that we have an official crackhead, now we have cocaine. So it's a weird thing. I'm not saying that correlation equals causation, but it is a weird thing. And in the law, it's called re ipsa loquitur, not to be confused with re eps loquitur, which is a non-charged conspirator of the January 6th insurrection. All right. And so we're going to see if the White House gets to the bottom of this. I'm not so sure that they will. They're not even denying it. The only logical conclusion then is Hunter. Hunter is the cokehead in the White House. All right. And so this is our final segment on the day. Hunter Biden is really trying to get this plea deal done before any more cocaine pops up at the White House. He is aware that the Republicans are at the gates. According to one Democratic strategist, they say that the Republicans smell blood. James Comer is all over it. We're going to wrap up this segment with a conversation from him where he says that they are now entering the deposition phase. The Oversight Committee and congressional Republicans have been sending letters for a long period of time, but they've got a witness now who is going to come in and knows a bunch about Hunter. We're going to hear who that is. But first, I want to start by going through this letter from Chuck Grassley. You know him as a senator, and he has been all over the Biden crime family along with Ron Johnson from the Senate. And they sent a letter over to this guy. His name is Henry J. Kerner. He's the United States Special Counsel. And the Special Counsel's office is supposed to be this independent office which you can file claims with, and they go and they independently investigate other agencies so that the agencies aren't investigating themselves. As we know, they do that all the time and they find we did nothing wrong. So the Special Counsel has an office. We hear that in the Trump case, we've got Special Counsel Jack Smith. We know that there is a much less involved, much less public other special counsel called Robert Hur. He's investigating the Joe Biden classified documents. You're also familiar with Special Counsel Robert Mueller, for example. But there is a Special Counsel's office, and Henry J. Kerner is at the top of it. And so Chuck Grassley and Ron Johnson, they sent a letter over to Henry Kerner, and they're upset. This is fired off by a number of different Congress people. You see them here. Chuck Grassley on the Budget Committee. We have Ron Johnson, who is on the subcommittee on investigations. We've got Jason Smith from the House of Representatives. He is on the Committee on Ways and Means. James Comer from Oversight, and Jim Jordan, chairman of the Judiciary. They're joining forces, the Senate and the House of Representatives, coming together, smashing the rings of justice together, and sending this letter off to the Office of Special Counsel, Honorable Henry J. Kerner, from the Congress of the United States. They tell us. All right, dear Special Counsel, the DOJ and the IRS have reportedly engaged in unlawful whistleblower retaliation against veteran IRS whistleblowers. They say multiple news reports indicate that the whistleblower and the investigative team were removed from the Hunter Biden investigation by the IRS and DOJ at their request as a retaliation for making protected whistleblower disclosures to Congress. So remember Gary Shapley and Mr. X, two whistleblowers, very experienced with the IRS. They came public, went and talked to the congressional committees, made their complaints known, were immediately removed from the Hunter Biden investigation by the IRS. They blew the whistle. They were essentially reassigned or fired. So Congress says, hey, Special Counsel's office, we are also aware that in response to these disclosures, acting special agent in charge, this guy, Kareem Carter, that he sent an email to his supervisors, including to the whistleblower, stating that no information involving the investigation can lead the field office without first going through the chain of command directive and by seeking approval from a supervisor. However, that email, that instruction from special agent in charge, Kareem, that email failed to include the anti-gag provision as required by the law, as well as included under the Appropriations Act. This anti-gag provision prohibits the use of appropriated funds and the enforcement of non-disclosure agreements or other restrictive policies that doesn't allow for lawful protected speech. In other words, you as the boss, as the special agent in charge, Kareem Carter, can't send emails gagging your team unless you notify them that there are certain things that they can talk about. Employees must be apprised of their right to make those disclosures. And so they were just sending out these blanket things to the whole team. Don't talk about this case. You're on the Hunter Biden investigation. Don't you dare say a word about this. The anti-gag provision prohibits the use of government funds if it doesn't contain the following statement. So this must be included in those types of emails, saying that you have whistleblower protection. So if you're blowing the whistle, you are allowed to talk about it. But they didn't want that included because they were trying to suppress the possibility of whistleblowers in the first place. Congress says, in addition, we have been made aware of an IRS email transmitted by the IRS Commissioner, Doug O'Donnell, to another IRS employee regarding the lawful reporting of allegations of wrongdoing and protected whistleblower disclosures. In this email, the commissioner states that he's writing because he's got concerns about allegations of wrongdoing and misconduct. Now, while the email says that the IRS is deeply committed to protecting the role of the whistleblowers, it also fails to inform their employees of their constitutional rights to make disclosures. And the law does provide them the right to make those disclosures. But Deputy Commissioner's email from the IRS states IRS employees may make disclosures to a supervisor, to a management, or to the DOJ Office of the Inspector General, but it blatantly fails to provide that the IRS has a right to disclose to Congress. So you see what they're doing is they're trying to manage this. It's like, oh, you can file all the complaints in the world, but you have to file them in this box. And this box goes right into the shredder. So as long as you file them into the shredder, file all the complaints. We don't care. But if you dare to step out and file them in the congressional box where they'll actually read it, that's going to be a problem. And so they're constantly telling them, put them in this box, put them in this box. This is another example of the IRS seeking to chill whistleblowers from reporting to Congress. Now, the importance of protecting whistleblowers from unlawful retaliation and informing whistleblowers about their rights under the law cannot be understated. After all, it is the law. Accordingly, Special Counsel, your office, we request that you immediately investigate all allegations of retaliation against these whistleblowers and all violations related to the IRS failure to include the anti-gag provision. And we also request you immediately seek disciplinary action against all those engaged against all unlawful conduct against these whistleblowers. The IRS and the DOJ must be held accountable for all instances of retaliation against whistleblowers and misconduct, and federal agencies cannot conceal their wrongdoing behind illegal non-disclosures. We also would like a briefing to discuss the next steps with you. Thank you for your prompt attention. Sincerely, your friends, Chuck Grassley, Ron Johnson from the Senate, from the House, Jason Smith, who has been doing great work with the whistleblowers, James Comer from Oversight, and Jim Jordan from the Committee on the judiciary. Now, that went over to the special counsel's office. We still don't hear much from the other special counsel investigating Joe Biden, but we know that this is on the heels of Hunter Biden trying to enter in a plea agreement and to get this thing done and closed. Wall Street Journal reports that Democrats say that Republicans smell blood. Hunter Biden is trying to end his legal woes while Republicans keep moving forward. In a matter of the last couple days and months, Hunter Biden settled the child support dispute. He also has indicated intention to enter a plea deal where he's going to be admitting to crimes. But Republicans pounced on this plea agreement. Weiss sent a letter that we covered here. And Joe has told everybody that he's very proud of his son. But Scott Jennings says that what's more elite than doing all the things Hunter has done, but then you get to go to the White House. Hunter Biden, in the meantime, has been seeking to set up a legal defense fund. This is according to people familiar with the effort. Richard Painter, a law professor, has been approached for help with the project. And Hunter has settled with his baby mama, and other lawyers are not responding to comment. But Abe Lowell is now Hunter's lawyer, jumped into the fray, and the team is being assembled. And I came across this story. This guy is a former Republican who has joined on the Hunter team. His name is Denver Riggleman. He's out of Virginia. And this was interesting. He is now helping Hunter. Former GOP congressman and a January 6th Select Committee advisor, you see that, is now working with Hunty Poo. So it says that D. Riggleman of Virginia served as a senior technical advisor to the J6 probe, is now working with the legal team, advising President Biden's son, Hunter, who's facing increased scrutiny. He's focused on addressing issues, assessing data issues, and has assisted Hunter's lawyers as they contend with congressional inquiries. So he's been brought on as a lobbyist, a so-called Republican. Riggleman's work with Hunter was confirmed on Tuesday by Kevin Morris, a lawyer for Hunter, saying he's been helping us with data analysis, that they're working with Hunter's lawyers, and says, I and my forensics and my telephony team are conducting data investigations and analysis with a concentration on data across the spectrum. So they're going full on offense mode in the Hunter Biden camp, saying that they are working with lobbyists now to get their message across, because owning the DOJ, I guess, is not enough. But James Comer says the Republicans are also just warming up on this, saying that there will be more to come, says we have our first deposition lined up, and we already know more about this person who is going to be deposed.
And we're going to have an announcement, hopefully next week, of more findings, more disturbing findings that we found. You know, bank records don't lie. People make a big issue out of taxes. People cheat on their taxes all the time, but it's hard to cheat on bank records. We also are requesting more bank violations. We're hoping that Treasury will give us access to more bank violations that we believe would have information on the potential bribery charges that were alleged in the FBI documents. So our investigation's moving along. We're entering the deposition phase. We're going to have Devin Archer will be the first person that was involved in the Hunter Biden business dealings, or whatever you want to call them. He'll be the first person that we depose, and we have a list of who's who Devin that Archer, were involved in the Biden organization that we plan on deposing throughout the summer.
Right on.
I want to get your reaction to the cocaine found at the White House. The Oversight Committee actually has jurisdiction of the White House. What's your take on that? And do you believe that the Secret Service will actually report to Congress and provide the information about where they believe where it came from?
Well, as you know, Jason, the first step is we've requested a briefing from the Secret Service, and thank you for making the point that the House Oversight Committee has jurisdiction over the Secret Service. So we're expecting to be briefed on that. We have concerns about national security risk. Obviously, there are a lot of explanations that could be made for what happened there. But, at the end of the day, with all the money and all the security that we have around the White House, something like this should never happen. And we're concerned about the fact that the president's son, who we've said for 7 months now is a risk to our national security, is spending so much time in the White House. We have reports that say he's spending more time there than Joe Biden's actually spending there, because we don't really know where Hunter Biden lives unless he's living in the White House. And that's
So
a
he doesn't
concern,
get served.
because go back to the laptop that they want to deny. The people that he associated himself with for a 4-year time period are very questionable characters. Many of them are incarcerated. Many of them are in court that are currently going through many trials.
That's James Comer, and saying we're entering the deposition phase, which of course we are going to be looking forward to. Devin Archer and many other people, the tentacles of the Biden crime family extend all over the place. And of course, we are going to continue to cover it, my friends. So thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking this video. Thank you for inviting somebody to come over and join us on this channel. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, that is it for us on the day. We covered some good ground. Hunter Biden trying to get this all over before the Republicans uncover any more crack. White House refusing to deny that Hunter or Joe even had possession of the cocaine. Seems like an easy one. Jack Smith is subpoenaing the Secretary of State from Arizona, has already done that. Rusty Bowers is working hard on interviews with CNN. We've got a new Omnibus Order scheduled with trial dates in the case of Walt Nauta, and we covered his arraignment, met his new attorney, and covered some of the court proceedings therein. And so that, my friends, is it for us on this beautiful Thursday. But now it's time to hear from you and see what you have to say about this from our friends over on watchingthewatchers.locals.com, our friends over on YouTube, our friends on Rumble. We'll say what's up to Twitter and see who is here on this lovely day. And thank you, everybody, for the amazing support out there. This one came in from Michael Allen Hughes. Says, un altro giorno, un altro dollaro, which I believe is another day, another dollar. From Miguel Allen Hughes. Thank you, Miguel. Nikki LaChapelle became a supporter. Woo! Welcome, Nikki. Don't forget to grab that Telegram link on YouTube where the chat continues on and never, ever ends. We have Sergeant S. McGee says, I personally think it's clear that one of Trump's Secret Service agents told on him. Would the Secret Service have a bigger duty to the president than our country? I don't know what Secret Service agent you're talking about or in what context. But I think, I think the Secret Service, would be swearing an oath to the office, not necessarily to the person, to the office, to the position of a Secret Service agent, to the agency, not necessarily to Trump. So, in other words, they're not going to break the law on behalf of Trump, but I don't think Trump is asking them to break the law. I think that's the point. And unless this is about Trump and the Secret Service agent planting the dime bag, because I'm still waiting for the Trump connection on that one. I don't know how they're going to indict him for that. Ray Robertson says, do jurors need to have security clearances and a delay? Yeah, so I don't know the definitive answer on this. All right, I've sort of poked around on this and I don't have a clear answer on this. Here's how I suspect this works. What I imagine is there will be portions of the documents that do not need to be shown. All right, just like, remember when we covered the Ghislaine Maxwell trial? I'm not sure if you were here with us, Ray. But there were huge portions of the materials that just didn't need to be made available to the jurors. So I'm wondering how much of that they'll be able to redact and show without necessarily having to read them in. But they will have to be shown things. Okay, so there will have to be some agreements and non-disclosures and all sorts of stuff. And it's going to get complicated. So long story short, I think that there will, in fact, be delays. This one came over from Troublemaker Jonah. Says, Bowers gave away his loyalties in that interview. He's a free citizen of the empire. I heard him say that. Yeah, I don't think he said British, right? But he did say empire. He's a free citizen of the empire. Yeah, I noticed that. That was kind of a weird phrase. I didn't really know what that meant. But apparently you were able to glean something from that. Yeah. Cod Tongues says, do you mind a little self-promotion? No, I don't mind. If you say the word and I will desist, 2020 election fraud picture book, have a peek and a laugh. So Cod Tongues apparently is inviting you over. I'm imagining, Cod, that you have a Rumble channel. So I would invite you to go over to Cod Tongues Rumble channel, take a look at the election book, have a peek and a laugh over on Cod Tongues channel. Troublemaker Jonah says 2016 Kemp caught DHS hacking elections. So if DHS made elections critical infrastructure, but false electors are the issue? Well, yeah, and yeah, they are. I mean, they're going to say that that was the attempt to legally usurp the election. But again, it's like, hey, it's an alternative theory that was rejected, but that in and of itself doesn't make it illegal without more. We're going to have to see some actual violations of the law. But we have that one video. There's like 11 minutes of Democrats complaining about the election equipment. It's all over the place. And so that came in from Troublemaker Jonah. We had another one from Isaac Bowles. Says, all right, Mr. Blues Clues, what do the vegetables say? That's from Isaac Bowles. The vegetables say, I'm nutritious and delicious, ingest me into your body, and transfer all of our nutrients into your bloodstream to nutrify and fortify your body. That's what they say, Isaac. Good to see you. Fred says, if it's Hunter Biden's Coke, would it hurt his 2-year gun deal? In an ordinary world, yeah. But in this case, the government would probably just dismiss that too. Well, he did, that was old Coke. He's really doing better now. Hey, Chubby Stubby is in the house. Welcome to supporter Chubby Stubby in the house. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you joining us. And don't forget to grab the Telegram link in the community tab on YouTube below. Same thing for you, Ray K. Whoa! 17 months, Ray K. That is a long time, my friend. Man, we've been through a lot, haven't we? 17 months. We've been through a lot of stuff. Phew, man. We're still cracking away, man. We're still rocking and rolling. Amazing. Says, drugs in my pocket and don't know what to do with them. Well, I don't know. Take them to the White House, I guess. I don't know. It's like a safe drop-off space. Nobody cares. You'll never get caught. They'll do forensic analysis and fingerprints, and you can still get away with it, I guess. It's not even a big deal. Just drop them off at the White House. That's not legal advice, all right? So another one from Brian Reinhardt's in the house says, hope you cover Dr. Gal Luff's 14-minute statement soon. Oh, thanks, Brian. I haven't even heard of that one. So I will have to poke around on that. And thanks for being a member for 5 months. A 14-minute statement. I haven't heard that one. Ayako Bachi is here. Says number 10. Thank you, Ayacho Bachi, for that one. Troublemaker Jonah says, Twitter likes to hide my tweet. Please take a look. I'll take a look, Troublemaker. We'll see if we can get it. Thanks for the tip. Steel Stargazer says, you made me spit out my coffee with Hunty Poo in front of others. Yeah, Hunty Poo is one of the, I don't know, it's one of the stranger things that I say here. But I think it's kind of, I think it's very pejorative. You know, it just feels like he's just this total degenerate who has been kept under the wing of the Biden family. And he thinks he's like this hardened, like gangster, drug addict, sex fiend who's like transacting with these. He's just a weak, man, really. He's a little Hunty Poo. He's just pathetic is really what it is. So anyways, thanks. Thanks. It does feel weird to say it sometimes, but he is Hunty Poo at the right moments. We have the CCC video channel, Deep State Ops. That sounds like a great channel. See what the deep state's up to, monitoring their ops. Welcome to supporter. We're glad that you joined us. And Geegum Geegum sent in an amazing GIF. Look at this one. It says, don't forget to remind everyone to hit that like button. And you know who this is, don't you? That's Vientikis. And there he is, hitting the like button, baby. Don't forget to hit that like button. And V, you're doing a great job on that. And thank you, Geegum, for that beautiful beautiful meme smith, our meme smith extraordinaire. Sergeant Willie says, do you think Hunter gets his stash from Cocaine Mitch? Yeah, Cocaine Mitch came out that one time and before he delivered nothing of substance. Sergeant Willie, good to see you. Maybe it's probably a dealer in the White House. Nobody knows. Salty Sarge. Oh yeah, this is a good. Methinks that Isaac fancies himself as a cunning linguist. I think you're right about that. He does think he has fanciful language and highly capable linguistic skill sets. Isaac, indeed. Because his wife is very nutritious and she wants to be included in salad and shaker drinks. And Isaac is a cunning linguist indeed. Very, very articulate. And thank you for that one, Salty Sarge. Left that one up there a little bit longer in case anyone needed to get it. But okay, so let's say hello to a couple Twitter friends, and then we'll go on over to Locals for our amazing after party. And if you're a YouTube member, don't forget to join us on our Locals or on Telegram by going over to the Community tab if you're on YouTube. Community tab. Good Lord. And join us. And also, if you want to watch on Twitter, that would be really cool. So I'm not alone by myself, watching myself as the single viewer on Twitter, for crying out loud. Gosh, what's the point? All right, cancel Twitter. Just kidding. All right. Hey, Deplorable Fred's here. He says, Rob, I watched dozens of videos today on J6, found the word insurrection was used by Democrats less than 2 hours after the riot. That tells us they already know it was planned, but by Democrats to use us for a decade or more. Danny McWilliams says, Trump says, make America great again. Biden says, make enemies great again. Any questions? V says, it's good that the White House is adhering to its crack rock principles. That's right. And TJ King says, I heard the White House cocaine case is being handled by 3 Secret Service agents. One was the one that got karate chopped in the clavicle by Donald Trump. Remember Clavicle Girl? Yeah. Donald Trump was the one who, the other one had the steering wheel and wrestled away, and the third agent left his Colombian hookers to get in on this. That's amazing. Yeah, that's who was there. Yeah, that's a good one. That's funny as can be. And so we have those 3 Clavicle Girl. Yeah, Donald Trump was driving to the Capitol. Or driving back to the White House. He said, take me to the Capitol. I have to get the podium. And he reached the Secret Service by the clavicle, broke it in multiple locations. I think Melania was taking over the helicopter at the time. She had the rope ladder coming down. It was crazy. I'm sure you remember it. Hey! The CCC video channel with a very nice dono says, please make a video establishing a fact pattern of a 2-tier justice system. Would like to go back to at least 2016, comparing the treatment of the Clintons, Bidens, and Team Trump. I've got $100 coming your way if you do it. Well, thanks. Very nice of you, CCC video channel. First of all, it's a very nice dono. And I really appreciate the video idea. I think it's a pretty good video idea. And, I am working on stuff like this. So right now, we're working on a website. We're working on a newsletter. So one of the big things that we're getting very close to unveiling here is a fully functional newsletter that every day after the show, I think it's going to be the following morning, you'll get a summation of the show. So basically, you'll get an email, if you want this, an email with links to everything. Show notes, mind map, access. You'll get AI sort of summarized articles of the video that turned out really great. So like you can read a summary of what's in the video before you watch the video. And it's a really nice little thing that we have going on here. So we're working on that right now. But then it's going to have, we'll be able to do merchandise, and I've got some other cool stuff I'm working on there. And then at some point in the very near future, I would like to do more sort of prepared content. A lot of what we do is here on the fly, and basically it's created in real time. But if I could also write exactly what you're talking about, fact patterns, and make more cohesive arguments. Like I was writing an opening statement and turn that into a video, or preparing a case and turn that into a video, something that's a lot more higher produced and a lot more structured. I think that might appeal to a different segment on YouTube who don't like the live sort of off the cuff stuff, who want more tightly produced videos. So this is something I'm thinking about. Another segment is January 6th stuff. We've got a lot of stuff that I think I could make some good arguments about that would be persuasive. And so I appreciate the idea. And I appreciate the nice dono, CCC video channel. And again, thanks for being here. Very, very nice of you. Ray K says, drugs in my pocket, 1979, sung by the Monks. Keep forgetting how young Rob is. Come on, man. Drugs in my pocket. That's a song? I'm trying to remember it. I don't think I have it. Yeah. No, I don't have one in my head. Sorry about that, Ray K. Come on, man. I know. What can I say? What can I say? All right. And so that, my friends, thank you very much for all those very generous donos today from our friends on YouTube, our friends on Rumble, our great friends on Locals, of course, which is where we're going now, to our amazing member and members only after party. The web address is watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We do a lot of fun stuff. We'd love to see you over there. If you haven't already yet, save your 15% off on your Field of Greens. And there's a lot of other good stuff over there at fieldofgreens.com. You can save 15% at checkout and load up, my friends. If you like this mind map software and want to create your own mind maps, and I do. I mean, I use this for the show, obviously, but I use it for, planning. I use it for a lot of other stuff. I have mind maps galore because it helps me stay organized and sort of see where things go. If you'd like to use it, check it out, spotlightlawyer.com/mindmap, and create your free account. I also want to thank the mods who mod down the fort for us and keep things nice and beautiful and orderly. And Vienticus Prime was clipping away for us. Thanks, V. We got the, yes, we did. So Vienticus is here. Thank you, V. K Beans in the house, Just Cause, Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols, our friend John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Digger, and Donut Mine Me, all in the house. Our friend Sleepy Dog Lee, Paul Me No, miss him on Twitter, and Geegum Geegum, along with Nathan NA10, our meme smiths extraordinaire. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going to come back tomorrow to do it all again. It's going to be a beautiful Friday. And I hope to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.